Hello, and welcome back to another Chris McPherson Show Daily Dose, and it's time to preview the fourth test of the Ashes. The Ashes already won, the urn reclaimed, but there's still plenty to play for, and we'll unpack all of that, plus some of the wash-up from the third test. To do all of that, I am joined again by Adam Clemens. Clem, good to have you back online to talk some more cricket.
Thanks, mate. Happy to be here once again. Thanks for having me.
Well, we're in the countdown to Christmas, and of course, a Christmas present that we would like is if everyone could hit subscribe and like and get involved in the comments. Let us know what we get right, what we get wrong. God knows, I'm still riding pretty high after getting a few things right last time, but it's a bit like monkeys in a room with typewriters. Eventually, they'll whack out a sentence, but don't get too used to it, hey?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. You can't get them all right, but you got to take the wins when you get them.
Exactly right. Well, let's, as I said, unpack a little bit of the third test wash-up, and I want to go to a very, popular friend of Australian cricket, Stuart Broad. In October, Stuart asserted that Australia's squad was the weakest they've put out for an Ashes series since he'd helped lead England to the 2010-11 triumph. In the early hours of Monday morning, the larrikin that is Travis Head posted a smiling photo of him and the blue-eyed captain, Pat Cummins, overlaid with a caption, "Is it 2010 yet?" How good is keeping receipts?
It's the best. And it's honestly, I think a lot of people see this current Australian team as like soft and cuddly, but they have a hard edge that only comes out sometimes. And they definitely have tapped into the motivation of all the pundits in England that have written them off. There's even a couple of Australians. Steve O'Keefe had England winning the series 3-2. So, they appear to be one thing, but I think they still have the same hard edge that those teams from the early 2000s had.
Yeah, I just don't think that they wear it quite as visibly on the outside
That's right.
sometimes until afterwards. I think, we've gotten away from that, and obviously it peaked at, a point where, and I'm not going into the sandpaper of it, but the head-to-head confrontations of Quinton de Kock and David Warner and all that sort of stuff, we knew after that we had to move away from it. And this is, much better. There's the larrikinism to it that we love as Aussies. And, speaking of that, the other one that I saw coming out of the celebrations, we had Trav Ball, we had Kez Ball, but no, it's Ron Ball. They all had the T-shirts made up, the boys, and having a bit of a laugh at Andrew McDonald's expense, or maybe he's in on the joke. I'm not sure, but some people suggesting that maybe Ron Ball is the death of Baz Ball, and I think it's great that at the end of the day, all publicity is good publicity for cricket, but it's just quite hilarious. And I think Uzi posted one, and we'll share the photo here, and it's a bit of a giggle, isn't it?
Oh, definitely. I mean, and like I said, they've used it as motivation. They've had a bit of fun with it. Obviously, the coach and all the support staff have got in on it as well, and they've really enjoyed themselves from what I saw from the wash up in Adelaide, and they deserved it. I mean, all the doubters and everything that thought they wouldn't get the job done yet, and they've done it easily in the end.
Yeah, well, they certainly did. It's been convincing in the end. There's lots of people talking about, as you say, there was even Aussies and, a few of them, a few people scoffed when Glenn McGrath suggested 5-0. I don't know whether they scoffed because it was a 5-0 prediction or because it's Glenn McGrath, and that's just what he always predicts. But, this is one of those things that's now well and truly alive. When you have a look at all these expert predictions, and I saw a graphic the other day of a bunch of them compiled, and there's very few of them left because even a lot of people suggested that, it would come down to the last test, all those sorts of things, that England would win one of those first few tests. But I think it's fair to say that, it's probably an underperformance from England. But now where do we go to? The Ashes is sealed. Do you think there's a risk of Australia taking the foot off the throat firstly?
I don't think so. Some of the language coming out of the squad after the win in Adelaide was pretty deliberate. 5-0's on the cards, and they want to go for it. They want to stamp themselves as put themselves in the same echelon as those teams that have done 5-0 before. The 2013-14 side, the 2006-7 side both did it, and they were both teams full of superstars. So, they want to have their time, leave their legacy on the game, especially with the surrounding environment of this Test series, with the Baz Ball and with all the talk beforehand. There's obviously talk before every series, but I feel like it was ramped up this time, and they really, they want to put themselves on the same pedestal that teams of old are on.
Yeah, I think they certainly want to, as you say, burn and etch their own legacy, especially for a couple of these players who are getting a little older. Usman Khawaja leading that charge, as we know, but we'll talk a little bit more about the makeup of the team and some of the old man injuries that are starting to strike down the squad at the moment.
Yeah.
On the other side and the flip side of that coin, Is there a chance for England? It's actually not a bad thing that the series is over now. There's less pressure. They've lost the series. It might actually free the shackles for a couple of these players.
Oh, I think so. I think the guys that get to stay and play on. I think there'll be a couple of changes. We'll get into that later on. But I think the one thing that people forget about is there's still WTC points up for grabs. So I don't know. I know that Australia will be keen to get as many as possible and take them when they can, but England have still got a little bit to play for in that respect. And I guess that was the whole idea of the WTC was that there's still something to play for every single test that you play. Uh, and I also think that, before the series started, I had conversations with you and a couple of other guys that 3-1 was my tip and for England to win a dead rubber. So I don't want them to win the test, but I didn't think they were bad enough that they would come over here and lose every single one.
So what I'm hearing from Clem is that there's an emotional hedge there in case England win one just to feel a little bit better about it.
Yeah, maybe, but I think I'm going to put that to the side. I think 5-0 sounds pretty good.
5-0 does sound very good. Well, let's look ahead to the fourth test and how that shapes up. Obviously, it's the annual classic that is the Boxing Day test. It'll be a sold-out MCG. Despite the series being over for the first couple of days, it's going to be absolutely huge. But there's been some moves in the Australian squad already. We know about Nathan Lyon. We might come back to him. But Pat Cummins has been put on ice for the rest of the series and even talked that he may not play in the T20 World Cup in February. He got back. He did what was asked of him. I don't think it's necessarily anything too concerning. It's not a recurrence of an injury, but it does create an opportunity for a man who has been on the outer for a long time, Jai Richardson, who's been through 3 shoulder surgeries, the third of those earlier this year. He's been ramping up his bowling, playing for Australia A, bowled with good pace in the nets to the team. He's been part of the squad for the first 3 tests. Well, not officially part of the squad, but been a net bowler. This is, I guess, reward for a lot of perseverance, through a lot of injury, a lot of challenges for a guy who was, the heir apparent, a good handful of years ago.
Yeah, well, his last test was during the last Ashes series here at home. So it's been a long time between drinks for him, and it's good. It's been great to see him back in the nets. Getting his feet up. Obviously, they're confident that he can get through the workload because they've seen him in the nets. Most of the bats would have batted against him and seen that he's as good as he's ever been. Now with Pat Cummins, Ronnie, the coach, he said that the long-term plan was always for him to come in when required and play 1 or 2 tests and then put him back on ice, which is really interesting to see how far out they've sort of forecast this series and planned for it. And now he's going to miss the last 2 tests, and he might even be on ice for the T20 World Cup. So, it just shows how much planning has gone into this series for the Aussies, and to keep under a lid on it like that from the media and whatnot has been very impressive.
Yeah, certainly interesting to see the strategy of it all overall. But I guess for Jai Richardson, you'd think it'd be pretty surprising to see him come into the 11. We'll get to the spin side of things in a moment, but you would think that probably Michael Neeser's probably got his nose in front. That 5 for in Brisbane. Even Brendan Doggett's probably as an incumbent who look didn't set the world on fire, but bowled pretty consistently and solidly and did a job for us in the in the opening opportunities he had. You would expect that those two would probably be in the pecking order before Jai. But again, as I said, great story seeing him back in the squad.
Yeah, definitely. I think, we'll get into our 11s a bit later, but I've got Michael Neser coming in just to finally get a chance to play not a pink ball test for starters. And the only reason I can see why he wouldn't come in is if they want extra pace. And that's where Brendan Doggett might have his nose ahead. I don't think not a good look for the Australian fast bowling cartel to have the keeper up for the stumps for 2 of our 3 quicks.
Yeah, that is an interesting scenario when you look at it from that point of view. Having a bit of out-and-out pace is never a bad thing. The good news is that everything we're hearing, despite the fact they've both bowled nearly 100 overs, we will see Scott Boland and Mitchell Starc just rolling on through. I mean, Starkey's made a living from pushing through pain, and I did love on the last day, actually, Alyssa Healy was in commentary, his wife, and they were talking about him he was just sort of getting his thumb in and digging into his own back a little bit. Sort of like, he's trying to do this, he's trying to do that. And she's like, no, he's just old. No sympathy at all. So that's wonderful to see. The man I want to talk about before we get to the spinners, though, Sean Abbott, he'll make his return to the Big Bash from his hamstring injury that ruled him out of the Ashes on Boxing Day, it's projected now. I've just got a feel for him. He really looked like, you talk about pace, he looked like he was getting his pace up. He was consistently bowling in the 140s. He was looking really good coming into the Ashes. And then that hamstring injury hit. Realistically, had that not hit, there's a good chance that he's probably played 2 tests already and is probably in the box seat to come in Boxing Day. He's a guy that's been there and thereabouts, played a lot of white ball cricket for Australia, but I know that there's a plethora of players that are on this list that have played no tests and knocked on the door, or played one or less tests, one or a few tests, and but you just feel for Sean Abbott. Obviously, a prolonged career. The guy's been around for 15 years, toiling away. He's the leading wicket taker in Big Bash cricket. Just a moment that I feel for him.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's a bit strange to think about guys like Jai Richardson being 8th in the pecking order behind guys like Abbott, Doggett, Nisa, but Abbott's been in and around the squad for so long. I'm surprised these new guys running 12th man know the Gatorade orders, because Abbott's been running drinks for so long now, and he's just when it looked like he was finally going to get his chance, it's kind of just been snatched away from him. Some part owing to performances of others, like Nisa getting 5 for, Doggett holding his own, and obviously Stark ripping the English to pieces. But yeah, it's not outside the possibility that he plays in Sydney. I mean, depending on his health and what happens with the rest of the bowlers, but he might have missed his chance.
Yeah, it'll certainly be interesting to see what comes, I guess, as we look to Sydney and whether they look to then rotate further. I guess the big question here, or the answer that we have, we talked about spinners when we wrapped up the test from Adelaide. Nathan Lyon out of action with a hamstring injury. I don't think we'll see him again. He'll be put on ice similarly to Pat Cummins now, even if his hamstring was to miraculously come good and it wasn't as serious as they once thought. He won't play either of these final 2 tests. They've brought Todd Murphy into the squad. A lot of people thought maybe they'd bring in a couple of spinners and at least have, maybe a bit of a bowl off, maybe a bit of an opportunity. But it's a clear sign of faith in the Melbourneian at the MCG, with an asterisk, though, because Andrew McDonald has said there is no guarantee they will play a spinner. If the pitch looks like it will take seam, he may go in with an extra pace spearhead, which, again, might create opportunities for someone like a Jai Richardson, where you go, okay, well, we're going to take Nisa in as that, consistent, line and length and just, toiling away outside the 4th and 5th stump line. You're going to come in and just, a bit of shock and awe, if you will.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, talking about Murphy, it would be great for him to get a home test, especially at his home ground. I think that the Aussies probably played their hand a couple of years ago by picking him in the Ashes and sort of earmarking him to be the next man up spinner for a home test, where the pitches aren't quite as conducive to spin as they are in the subcontinent. I know we've had a few guys that have been subcontinent specialists in the past, and Kuhneman and Murphy have sort of been those guys that come in when we need extra spinners. But I think he sort of got anointed during those last Ashes. I think he got 7 wickets across 2 tests. His last test was in Sri Lanka. And obviously then you got Rocket Trolley as well, who is, I think, older than Murphy even. So it sounds like they're going to go with Murphy and he's going to be the next man up when Lyon pulls the pin at this stage.
Yeah, certainly seems to be the way they're leaning to Murphy on the home deck there. But as we said, it'll be interesting to see what they do on match day. They've shown in recent times in a couple of pink ball tests a willingness to go without a spinner, and obviously you've got the spin bowling of Travis Head, Marnus Labuschagne if you really need it. But neither of those really is threatening a wicket taking option, but might just be there to chew up some overs if they've got the extra pace bowlers, I guess, in the squad. But the good thing is we've got depth there to call on in both those elements. In terms of the batting lineup, as we've suggested, Steve Smith coming back in, you would think that just means that Usman goes down one, and unfortunately for Josh Inglis, he just hasn't done enough to, I guess, retain a spot there. But I think he could still be one of those players, like he's young enough that he could, push for another recall in the future. As I said, Usman's undoubtedly, not got that long left, although, if Andrew McDonald wants to keep picking him, I'm sure he'll play for the next decade.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's a bit of an interesting one because Inglis, I've also got Inglis to make way, but he was the man they picked over Khawaja before Smith got pulled out with the vertigo. So but I guess it's just another matter of a player taking their chance and putting their best foot forward. I mean, Khawaja got 80 and 40, and they were pretty important runs in the grand scheme of things. that's basically. I think we've got probably the same 11 here. But the thing about Smith is he hasn't batted in the net since he went down with vertigo before the Adelaide Test. So there is a tiny possibility that we could see Australia's next Test captain put the blazer on when we go to Melbourne and for a Boxing Day Test, if first Test as captain, because Smith's not a dead certainty. So I mean, I'm going to put it back on you. Who I guess is the next man up to wear the blazer?
Well, I think it has to be one of the two South Australians. It's either Travis Head or
Mm-hmm.
Alex Carey, right?
Yeah.
There's obviously a viewpoint around, who would normally do it, and we often see wicket keepers step in as interim captains. But yeah, it's an interesting piece, right? Like it's a consideration we've got to have. Steve Smith's getting into, well into his 30s when you have a look at him. And again, it's a limited list. There's been 47 men to captain Australia. We're not even up to 50 yet over the whole history, which, it gets to 150 years in 2027 of Test cricket. We've got the big, I was going to call it centenary, but the 150-year celebration. It'd be interesting. I feel that unless there's some real grave doubt over Steve Smith, they would go with Smith just because it's not probably clear cut at the moment who their next man is. But yeah, it'd be Carey or Head. I'd love to see Travis Head. I think it could be an interesting one, but there's something that tells me that if they did need to do that, they would go to Alex Carey.
Well, we're going to get into some very nuffy areas here because if Alex Carey becomes the captain, he then has to pass on the singing of the song to someone else. And who he sends it on to, I'm not really sure. I think looking at my 11 here, it's got to be someone like Cameron Green because it's not going to be Travis because he's going to be probably the vice captain at the very least. But without digressing too much, I'm thinking it'll be Travis Head. Obviously, as captain, obviously, yeah, traditionally a wicketkeeper does come in and take the reins as captain when all of your other captain sort of places are taken or out. But Travis, I think, has been earmarked for a long time as the future leader of the team. So he's probably going to be next man up if that happens.
Yeah, look, it is a big if. And again, it'd be interesting, as you say, the song, if it's Alex Carey. I don't think that would play into their thought process around picking the next Test captain, just to let everyone know that's
No,
not,
no,
that's
no,
not
not
like,
sure.
Alex has got the song.
Yeah.
But yeah, it would be interesting to see, what happens there. And, does someone just get the song as a one-off, which has never been a thing. It's always kind of been that person who's sort of, a leader within the group, but not necessarily a leader who sets the field. But look, at the end of the day, it's a good problem to have that we've got that many sort of leaders to pick from. There's a part of me that I'd love to just see they get there and go, well, bugger it, we'll let Usman captain, as someone who's captained state cricket for a long time. But I don't think selectors are going to go, bugger it about the Australian captaincy.
No, definitely not. That did pass my thought process just for a moment, but I think that the public backlash from that would be bad enough. I mean, it would be huge. It's bad enough. Sometimes some people are carrying on enough just who's playing. But I think that interesting probably won't come to fruition. I think Smith will do everything he can to play, especially he kind of had a bit of a toys out of the cot moment there when McDonald and Cummins told him he wasn't playing in Adelaide, but I'd say he'll be doing everything he can to get right for Boxing Day.
Yeah, well, it is an interesting one, isn't it? And I think, from memory, even when you look at people who've captained Australia in other forms, Josh Hazlewood has been a captain in the white ball. Travis Head has done. I don't know if there's any other. Alex Carey did step in interim when Steve Smith got injured.
Has Inglis done 2020?
Yeah. So
wow.
Yeah, so they're the guys when you have a look at those leadership roles or vice captaincy roles.
Yeah.
One day, I'm trying to think. Josh Inglis is actually captain the one day side, so there you go.
Yeah, there you go.
Maybe we'll save him and bring him in. But yeah, Carey was the one day captain after Tim Payne, I think before Pat Cummins. Then obviously,
I think you might be right.
There was the Josh Hazlewood got that one game. Inglis is also captain the T20 side, but again, I don't think he's going to be in there. So. It's a quite limited list. I think between the three formats, we're somewhere around less than 100 captains, which is quite phenomenal. It's Test captaincy is one thing, but captaincy of Australia across all formats, like that is it's quite limited. But we'll wait and see. Lots of permutations. On the other side of things, obviously England have got to pick a side as well, and my goodness, I don't envy Brendan McCullum and co. we've talked about it before, and I don't want to lay the boot into the poor bloke, but Ollie Pope, surely he's, they're just, mate, you can go back to England, you can go and celebrate New Year's, on the Gold Coast, do what you need to do, go and put your feet up, clear your head, go and play some Big Bash if you can get an invite there.
Mm,
Maybe that might be the piece, and almost
yeah.
release him from the squad. That won't happen because they've only got one reserve batter, which is bizarre in itself, and
Mm,
especially when we always thought that was going to be, an interesting piece for them. But, that was going to be their strength with Harry Brook and, Joe Root and, Zach Crawley and Ben Duckett. Crawley's done enough, I think, to stave off
mm.
the knives for his back for now. He's still only averaging in the 30s, which, you don't see many test openers get as long of a run as he's had. But
No,
maybe
I've had a
comes in
look.
at number 3,
No,
right? And that's my thought. Or Jax comes up. But let's start with Jacob Bethel.
hmm
Do you think he comes in? And, otherwise, if he doesn't come in now, when does he come back into the side?
I've got Bethel coming in. I've got Jack slash Bethel there, but that all depends on whether they finally give Shoaib Bashir a go down the order. But uh, I think with Bethel, he's just been sitting there watching this whole thing go down. Ollie Pope, I know you spoke about earlier. Do England play a bit freer now? Is it one of those things where they just pick him again and say, just do what you got to do? And really, he's way out of chances. I wouldn't do it, but you know, it may be one of those things where now there's no pressure. He finally comes out and performs, and if that happens, the English media might totally self-destruct.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I think he's damned if he does, damned if he doesn't if he plays in this next test.
Mm,
Because if he survives without any pressure, they're like, oh well, that's great. It's a dead rubber. What use are you when the fire's happening in the crucible? All those sort of key moments. But then again, Bethel, he's played 4 tour matches if you count their game against themselves, and he's got 150. A
mm,
bunch of he's got 19, 71, 16, 44, 3, and 70. Like none of that is exactly, again, remembering that, the 70s are against Australia A and their own team,
mm.
16 against the Prime Minister's 11, 44 against the Cricket Australia 11. It's just, I'm not sure that it really, knocks the house down. But the one thing about Bethel, if you can find a way to slot him into the order, and this is the next thing I'm going to hypothesize, is he does give you another okay left arm ortho option if you need
Mm,
to bowl some more spin. So again, I think he'd be pretty unlucky. But if they did decide to move Will Jacks out and go pace only, bring Bethel in, maybe he comes in for Pope as almost the poison chalice that Cameron Green's had up the order. But
yeah,
I don't know. I'm really struggling with it, in terms of it. But again, he's got a first class bowling average of 31. A test
mm,
bowling average of 31, a first class bowling average of it's a little bit high. He hasn't been bowled as much, but he got off to a good start in his test career.
yeah,
He's got good one day numbers as well. I know that doesn't necessarily carry over, but this is a guy who can bowl a little bit. But again, if they do that and bring him in as a second spinner, you're going, well, what's Bashir got to do? The poor bloke. Have you ever seen a man more
exactly.
forlorn than him, wandering
Mm,
around on the Adelaide Oval, taking photos of the pitch, going, hey, mum and dad, this is where I could have played.
yeah, yeah. It wasn't a good look, was it? I mean, and yeah, I've got him perhaps in the side for this Melbourne test, but it feels like he's just so far on the outer. And really, the problem for all the guys playing in that second 11 are none of them have been knocking the door down. So it's not as though it's a straight swap because it's like they're having the same issues deciding who to bring in because no one's in form.
Yeah. It's what's the least worst option, not what's the best option.
Exactly.
Speaking of Bashir, his record doesn't exactly he was a bit of a
Mm,
puzzling selection when he got picked, right? 19
mm,
tests, which that's not too bad.
mm.
But that's over a matter of 24, 25. So it was quite a compressed period. 68 wickets, averages about 39, a test batting average of 7, which doesn't help their situation at all. He has 92 runs from 28 knocks in those tests. So a lot of red ink, which is great. But
Yeah,
he's
yeah.
played in India, England, and New Zealand. But 12 of his 19 tests have been against subcontinent teams. Some in India, some in England against Pakistan, India, and Sri Lanka. That's a tough gig as well, right? Outside of playing in India as a spinner, trying to make your way, you're playing on English and Kiwi decks. Not exactly. Some of the English decks will take the spin, but number don't. New Zealand decks aren't known for exactly
Mm-mm.
outside of Daniel Vittori, they haven't exactly had spinners that have bowled the house down. Pardon the parlance. but that's a tough, proving ground. That said, going to the MCG and trying to bowl spin, I don't think is going to be any easier. I wonder if they don't keep him and give him a run in Sydney just so that he's got a bit of confidence under his belt. Hey, maybe we get to bowl last and he gets 5 or 6 wickets and goes, okay, well, he goes back ready for their next tour. But I don't know. Like, I'm bereft of answers. There's part of me that says, just make some wholesale changes. But again, they've got 3 players they haven't used. Obviously, they've got some others that are there. Gus Atkinson could come back in. The pace bowlers have actually been okay. They just didn't get on top of the Aussie batters. They haven't been horrible. Matthew Fisher's the other one I want to talk about. He's played 1 test in 2022, got called back in when Mark Wood got ruled out. Like this is a junket if I've ever seen one. 1 for 71 in his 1 test. He's got a first-class average of 28, though. So I wonder if he's not just maybe a wild card that you throw in, bring him and Atkinson in, push Jacks up to 3, and just, again, what have you got to lose? But look, we're throwing darts here. We're throwing darts with a blindfold on, hoping to get a couple of back-to-back bullseyes.
Look, honestly, I feel like we're sitting in the English selection room, if there is one, because I reckon they're doing the same thing. They're damned if they do, damned if they don't, with a few players. Like you said, Bashir could come into Sydney and take a bag in the second innings and maybe win them or draw them a test. And then they go, why didn't we pick him the whole series? But for the fast bowlers, I have to give credit to Jofra Archer. I did not think that he would play 3 tests in a row. I didn't think he'd play every test, and I didn't think he'd play 3 in a row. So it's impressive to think that he might play all 5. I've got Atkinson coming back in. Bryden Cast has just been so expensive. I don't know if it's been a tactic from Australia to go after him, or whether it's just been that his bowling has been just wide or too short, too straight. He hasn't built any pressure. So I think he took 3 important ones in Brisbane, or maybe 4, but it's when the Aussies were hitting out. I don't think he took any important wickets. Josh Tongue got 4 wickets in the second innings in Adelaide, so I think they'll go with him again. And then, as you said, for the spin option, if Will Jacks goes to 3 and they don't pick Bashir, maybe Fisher does come in.
Yeah, well, my side. I don't have Jacks going to 3, but my side I've got Crawley and Duckett, and I've advocated this already. I've got Harry Brook at 3.
Okay,
I've got
yep.
Joe Root at 4, Ben Stokes at 5, Jacks at 6, Smith at 7. I'm happy for them to be interchangeable, even for Smith to go up. And again, we talked about this the other day. I'm a fan of having adjustable lineups. Like, Australia's seen it works with Travis Head. Teams are so set with Tests, though, but that would be my 7. I'm then going 4 pace bowls and relying on Root and Jacks to get the job done with the spin. And again, I'm bringing Atkinson back in, Tongue, Jofra, and I'm giving Fisher a go with first class average of 28 over an okay sample size. Give him a bowl. Like, again, you don't want to be debuting a pace bowler in Sydney, and if he doesn't go well, then you bring Bashir straight in as a straight swap in Sydney, where you'll essentially probably bowl some more spin, especially if you have to bowl last. And just let him off the chain, Fisher, and just go, mate. This is your chance. It's been 3 years. You've had the call up. Make the most of your opportunity, because sometimes we've seen those situations, like Scott Boland, right? Like,
exactly.
the guy takes his opportunity, and then he's just there and thereabouts, and now you've got another ace up your sleeve when Mark Wood's fit. All of a sudden, instead of going, oh well, we've got Wood and we've got Archer, and then Tongue's pretty consistent. We'll fill another spot if we need to, and we're trying to make up some numbers in the squad. It's like, right, well, we've actually got 4 or 5 guys, exactly the situation Australia's in now. Like we've got a list of 6 or 7 now. Once we had a couple of injuries, we've still got more lining up. We've got Jai Richardson coming back from injury. Then we're going to have Sean Abbott coming back from injury. These are the options we have. So again, and if he doesn't, well, he's twice been a one-hit wonder in Test cricket and probably never gets seen and heard again until a random trivia night at a pub in Leeds.
That's right. I think it's literally at the point now where there is nothing to lose for them to try something new. They've been trying something they thought was new for the last 3 years, and it's got to the point where it's failed, and now they can talk about a new direction, talk about a new style of play, bring someone that has been part of the squad for a while, and just say, mate, this is your chance to sort of grasp a spot in the team or in the wider squad for future tours.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's the key, right? Here's your opportunity. You've had that one test, that one glimpse before. Get yourself into the pecking order now. There are some, I mean, I wouldn't call them vacancies, but there's some guys who haven't exactly, taken the opportunity on bouncy, moving decks.
Mm.
But you work that out, you set it all up, and you have a look there. So, um,
Cool.
yeah, the opportunity arises for that. In terms of the forecast as well, there is a little bit of rain predicted around Thursday and Friday. At the end of the day, I don't think it's going to be enough to sort of help them when this gets underway. But they'll take anything they can get. What's the result that you've got here, Clem? What are the headlines? Who's going to step up?
I've got no choice but to go with Australian win now, do I? The rain, if there's again clinging onto emotional like emotional things. If it rains in Melbourne and doesn't rain in Sydney, I'm going to be so happy because every single year the Melbourne media get into Sydney about having a washout. Um, Sydney is the home test for you and I, so it would be nice to go there and have sunshine for 5 days. I'm not living in full confidence, just hope. But a little bit of rain in Melbourne would be quite funny to me. Now, as far as predictions go, I think Murphy comes in. Uh, I reckon Boland's going to get a bag of wickets. Like it's his home ground. The crowd gets behind him. He goes about his work like he's very unassuming, but you know that he is soaking it in. Now for the runs for the Aussies, it would be great to see Jake Weatherall get some runs. He had a nice 70, I think, in Brisbane or Perth, maybe. I think it was Brisbane. Um, but it would be good to see him get some runs. I think, and even Marnus is still due for a big score. He peeled off a ton of hundreds in Sheffield Shield earlier this year. So it'd be good to see him go on with one.
Yeah, I agree on all those fronts. I had Boland and Weatherald as my two. I had Boland to take some
Oh, there
wickets.
you go.
I had Weathers, as you said, 72 and 17 not out in Brisbane. Didn't really get a start there in Adelaide. Didn't get a start here. Again, we talked about that pressure coming off. I wonder if the pressure now comes off for a young guy. Melbourne can be a good, true batting surface, especially if you can get yourself settled in. So I'm going to go him to break his duck, get his first 100 ever, setting up a big total for Australia early, and then Scotty Boland to chime in. I think we'll also see Mitch Starc continue to race his way up the rankings. We talked about that, where he sits in terms of, I guess his place in the echelon of the greatest bowlers. He can overtake quite a few over the next, little bit. But yeah, and again, I won't be surprised if Mitch Starc sneaks in with another half century with the batters again. He's got two
Mm,
already this series. Not bad from 4 knocks as a bloke who's realistically, a number 9 batsman. So
mm,
he's really starting to sneak his way up there. There's 77, I think, in Brisbane and 54 in Adelaide. So
mhm.
yeah, I think Starkey will. I'm expecting him in the second innings of both bat and ball to go well. So looking
Mm,
forward to it. Can't wait, mate. Just a few sleeps now. What's
mm.
what more could we want from Christmas, but another drubbing of the English?
That would be terrific. Just before we go with Stark, I had a look. So he's 15 wickets away from MJ's 2013-14 tally, which is a long stretch, but not totally out of the realms of possibility. I mean, he had 18 across the first two tests, um, and he's only 15 runs behind Mitchell Johnson's run tally from that series as well. And I think Mitchell Johnson did get a 60 or something in that series, so he wasn't a bunny by any means. He never was with the bat. So I think he has a couple of first class hundreds as well. So yeah, mate, I'm super excited. Can't wait to put my feet up in the lounge, full of ham on Boxing Day morning, and just watch cricket.
Yeah, Boxing Day is the gift that keeps giving. You got the Boxing Day test into 2 games of Big Bash.
Mm.
Just on Mitchell Starc really quickly before we wrap. His test average now 26.5, while his bowling average is
What?
20.9. That's all rounder
That's
territory.
unbelievable. That's unbelievable. I can't believe that. It's 26. That's really impressive. I mean,
Oh, I've got
um,
that the wrong way around. Sorry, it's 20.9
oh
for his batting average.
right.
I was
Well,
looking at the
still
wrong numbers. I got a bit excited, but even then, to be up over 20, it's not quite all round numbers. But
no.
again, he's 28 runs short of 2,500
Mm,
test runs without 100 as
mm,
well. So
yeah,
um,
yeah.
yeah, not bad at all. But as always, Clem, thank you to you. Looking forward to
Thanks,
catching
mate.
up throughout the test with some recaps. But yeah, again, thank you, mate. Merry Christmas, and wishing you the best for the holidays, and we'll talk Boxing Day.
Merry Christmas, mate. Thanks a lot for having me.
A big thank you to you all for tuning in as well to the Chris McPherson Show. Of course, if you haven't already, hit subscribe down below. Hit that bell as well. You get notifications about when all the episodes are dropping. And you can follow along with the short snippets and little tidbits on our social media at The Chris Mack Show. You can find us on all your favorite platforms, X, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. We're across all of them. And, of course, here on YouTube. But until then, Merry Christmas to you. Have a safe time with your family. And we look forward to coming back to you talking more cricket ahead over the summer.